thought would be fun to talk about. And so that's what we're here doing today instead of the other one. But I will eventually do the other one because there's definitely some fun emails that have been out there. But who we are, we both work for Black Hills Information Security. I am a pen tester, red teamer, and I host this show called Tradecraft Security Weekly. If you want to check that out, it's basically like I try to keep like 10-minute long episodes, occasionally go over that, and just talk about general tradecraft and what?
Need your pack.
Oh. I am not turned on yet.
I'm ready.
Thanks. Is that better? And avid OWA enthusiast.
Cool. My name is Mike Felch. You stay ready on Twitter. So like Bo said, with Black Hills. And then I also work with helping organize BSides Orlando. And I'm the chief breaker for OWASP Orlando. So real quick disclaimer, we actually really do love Google. We love their security. We love the emphasis that they put on really trying to secure their products. And it would be a discredit to them to not say that. So even though we're going through this presentation about Google and red teaming them, the reality is they actually do a really good job at what they do. And so I just wanted to put a kind of preface on that.
And one other thing to add to that is it's not necessarily that we're attacking Google as a company per se. It's things that we can attack for organizations who are utilizing Google for Business, G Suite, that kind of thing.
Right.
So just to state that. And also, this isn't like an attack against like Google as a single entity. A lot of these techniques you're going to see that could be translated across other environments as well. But it's Google, so good stuff. So here's a brief overview of kind of what we're covering. We're going to give you a brief G Suite security overview. We're going to talk about a real-world offensive attack path against organizations who utilize Google products. We're going to demo some new functionality that we've added into MailSniper and this new thing, CredSniper, which you will thoroughly enjoy, I guarantee it. And then defense and how to fight back against these attacks. And then some questions if we have time. So I'll let Mike talk about the G Suite security.
All right, cool. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is basically just a few of the cool things that Google does for suspicious activity. Basically, it will send you an alert on your device. It'll email you. Some of the stuff you've probably already seen. The other thing that's interesting is that on some of the two-factor, what they'll do is they'll have additional security dialogues. And so they'll ask you to kind of interact with it. They'll show you some information. And then the other cool thing that Chrome does, if you're using Chrome, is that it'll actually identify a phishing site. So if you have a Gmail phishing site set up, Chrome will alert the user that, hey, this is a malicious site. You want to be careful here. And then the way that we get around that is just use SSL. It seems like if you just set up a Let's Encrypt SSL cert, they'll be fine. And then the other thing that they really provide that's super critical for any of the admins on Google is the admin console. You have really powerful tools that they give you to kind of drill in and focus on where you need to focus. So, but from that, I want to speak a little bit about the two-factor options that Gmail or that G Suite actually provides you. So there's a lot of different options that they give you. One of the things that I really want to put emphasis on, none of them are bulletproof. And so there's a difference between convenient two-factor options. Convenient two-factor, yeah, that's not going to work. Options and then being a little bit safer. And so the problem is not a Google problem like we were saying earlier. This is kind of affecting all products that are using two-factor across the board. It's, this in the back of everybody's mind, well, just use two-factor, but it's not as simple as that. And then the other thing that Google does provide you with this new thing that they came out with earlier this year, a couple months ago, actually, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, was the Advanced Protection Program. And it's basically using 2 UTF devices in order to lock down your account and some really cool other things. But I wanted to put some little emphasis on each of them. So SMS, so getting a text message. Basically, when you log into your account, you're going to notice that it's going to send a text message there. So it's your username plus your password plus your SMS token that comes to your text messages. It's super easy to enroll if you're a Google admin, and so usually that's what they do, right? They enforce two-factor across the domain, and then they just enable SMS because SMS is just really easy. Everybody has a phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. Really convenient. And then the other thing is it's a backup option. So in case you have some of the more sophisticated ones like a UTF device, which we'll talk about a little bit later, it's the default. It's one of the backup options for recovering access to your account. And the thing to note here is Google really wants to move away from this. So I've seen it kind of across the board. They don't want to use SMS anymore. They're pushing for new alternatives. And then NIST is actually deprecating it as well. And so, but they're deprecating it for different reasons. They're talking about like mobile carrier redirection, like these really advanced attacks on people. And then maybe like a malicious app on a phone. So they don't want you to use SMS for whatever reason. I want to say if you have two-factor turned on and you have SMS, you got to change it. Like this is absolutely the worst option I would say for Google. And then so next is kind of a time-based one-time pass. So this is like the Google Authenticator app. So you get a token, it expires every 30 seconds. It's a little bit more difficult to enroll for if you're non-technical. But there's lots of different apps available. There's Duo Security, there's the Google Authenticator app, there's other ones. This is also a backup option for Google. So I'm bringing up the backup option for a reason because we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you switch devices and you have to resync again and it gets kind of hairy if you don't have the Google Authenticator app available. So it's a pretty bad idea as well. And we'll see why in a little bit. But basically it's fairly straightforward. The user logs into the site. It's already in sync with Google server, so there's a secret that's sent, it's signed, there's some time on it, it gets back to the server. According to how you signed it with what crypto, it knows whether or not you're the original owner of that, and then it just passes you through. And so the next one is this phone prompt. This is really cool. This is, so with the G Suite, now they have, if you have an Android or an iOS, like they'll have this phone prompt. And the phone prompt, you just have to say, yes, that's really me that's logging into the session. The interesting thing is if it seems like the authentication is a little bit suspicious, it'll actually put a number on the web page and say, hey, touch this number on your phone, and it'll give you 3 different options. It's seamless for verification, so if you have a Google account inside onto your Android phone or an iOS with the app that they have, I guess, it's a pretty good alternative for obvious reasons. And so next is kind of the UTF. So this is universal two-factor. It's a hardware device. It could be USB or Bluetooth. This is probably the best option. The problem is it has such a slow adoption rate. So Chrome uses it for Google accounts. So it does require Chrome. So if you're using like Microsoft Edge, which I don't think anybody's using Edge, and if you are, you want to switch anyway. But the UTF device uses, it requires Chrome. And so it also requires a backup option. Well, you have to think like, okay, so I got a hardware device. Do I really want a backup option? I mean, if I'm using a device that's secure. And then it's the strongest verification process. It's definitely the strongest option. And it's fairly straightforward. I mean, it's just using PKI. It's doing some fun, certification. You enroll a device into Google, and then it knows, if this challenge is sent to the device, it uses the JavaScript API. And then it interacts with the hardware device, it sends the challenge response back, and then you're good to go. So that's kind of the UTF. So that's kind of where we're at. You want to start this one?
Yeah.
But that's basically the what we're going to be kind of looking at.
So let's talk about attacking organizations who use Google. So you can look at an enterprise who uses Google the same way you look at any other enterprise. You're going to do recon. If you've ever heard me talk about MailSniper, I mean, I go through the entire attack path of how to break into most organizations just through email. And that kind of ties this whole thing around to Google now too. And basically, so what we typically would do is one of the things that we typically would grab like contacts from like LinkedIn or something, develop a nice list of that, create like a doppelganger Gmail account of somebody who works in that environment. And we were discussing this last night. We're talking about whether or not it's better just to go with like the @gmail.com domain, or just go buy like a typo squatted domain, and then have like the employee's name at typo squatted domain. And honestly, like we did a red team and had what, like, was it 25%?
Yeah, 24 I think.
On one that was just using gmail.com as the domain. So go create a Gmail account, have the guy's name, and then import contacts. So you can create a CSV that you import into Google, and it will grab all the profile images and the names of everyone whose email address you have, which is pretty cool. Set up your server environment. This is something that we're going to talk about more in detail here, but
I think we have a slide for it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we have a slide for it.
No, we don't.
Oh, we don't?
No.
But
we'll talk about it.
It's automated.
Yeah.
And then, so one of the cooler things is creating like a fake agenda in a GDoc environment and then pointing the user at that, which we'll talk about that whole piece here in a moment. But this is basically like the setting up of getting ready for an attack. So set up a fake GDoc, have it redirect to like an authentication page that you control, capture creds, and with MailSniper, you will see that this is going to be a lot easier than you would think. So talking about exploiting trust, let's talk about phishing for a moment, because phishing and users, everyone's been on, they've been trained, right? Like that's the thing that every organization trains their employees on. Don't click on this link. Don't, navigate to this page that was sent to you that, looks like it came from like a Nigerian prince or whatever. So one thing that is kind of new that we thought would be fun is, what about calendar invites? How many people actually look at the content of a calendar invite? So we actually ended up doing this research along this line of what we call event injection. So event injection, what is that? Story time. Well, not yet. So basically, like the whole overview of what like this whole event injection thing is, basically we have the capability with Google to inject events into anyone's calendar we want. And this is something we reported to Google, and they haven't responded yet. So this is one of those things. This is probably one of the most important pieces of this entire talk, is this whole event injection thing I'm about to talk about, because this is crazy. All right, so basically what you can do is you can think about the possibilities of having an event show up in an employee's calendar that they feel the urgency to go to, right? So like have it like be a meeting that happens in 10 minutes, like an all hands meeting. And now they get an alert saying, oh, I have this meeting. And in the content of that, say, review this agenda prior to this meeting and make it like a malicious GDoc. So story time, how we even got here. One day I was just looking through my calendar, and I saw that I had like travel plans like the next day, and I was like, where did that come from? I'm not going anywhere. I mean, John hasn't sent me there yet. And so I started looking through the email, and what it turned out, it was a coworker had sent his travel plans in the body of an email, and Google thought that was my travel plan, so it added it to my calendar automatically. And so we started looking at that as like being that was the starting point of this whole thing. Like we decided, okay, so if I can send travel plans just in an email, how does that work? Like how does Google look at that email and decide whether or not it's going to add it to your calendar? So there's metadata attached to that email, which we thought was cool. And that was the start of it, right? Like if I just send you an email, it's going to add it to your calendar. That's kind of neat. But then an email isn't actually even necessary. So Mike, he started just looking through the calendar, and literally all you have to do is create an event, invite somebody to that event, and click Don't Send the invite. Like it pops up a little box that says, do you want to send the invite to the attendee? All you have to do is click Don't Send, and it doesn't send them an invitation, but it will add it to their calendar automatically. So yeah, if they're a Gmail user, you don't have to send them an invite; they will be on their calendar. So it presents a really unique phishing situation, right? So here's a few ideas. Let's include a conference call link to a conference we control, and have people call in and record the call. That can get really interesting. Have it point to like a credential harvesting page. Have it point to a malicious attachment. So like with creating an event, you can add attachments, add a malicious agenda that's a backdoor of some sort. And then one of the things that Mike's going to elaborate on quite a bit here in a minute is sending them to a fake Google Auth page that collects creds. So this gets even more fun when you hit Google's API, because Google has an API that is really awesome. And so one of the things that we're going to demo later is basically there are a couple settings that would eliminate the availability of me adding a calendar invite to your calendar or an event to your calendar. But it's prefaced with the fact that you approved it. So there's an option that says, don't automatically add events to my calendar if I haven't approved it. With the API, I can make it look like you approved the event that I made on your calendar, which bypasses that completely. So yeah, it looks like they accepted it, bypasses the auto adding. And now let's talk about some personalized phishing.
Okay, cool. So real quick before we get into this, we'll talk about MailSniper real quick. So with MailSniper, everything that we're going to be doing and going through here, it's just a new tool that we kind of put together. It's modularized, so and the module that we're using is the Gmail module. But it's basically similar to all the other like set and those guys, but it makes it so that you could really spin up new SSL-based phishing pages on the fly, and then it also includes two-factor. So what we're going to walk through here is kind of a multi-stage process. This is specifically for Google. So we're going to look at, capturing the email, obviously, capturing the password. Oh, no, we found out that they have two-factor. Which one do they have? Are there additional dialogues? And so on and so on. And then we're going to retrieve the two-factor tokens straight from the user. And then we're going to redirect the user, and then we're going to vanish. We could just erase the event out of the calendar, and there's no history, there's no nothing there going on. And so this is basically the typical workflow that you would normally see. But with Google, so on phase one, what we're going to do is we're going to inject the event into the calendar. The calendar is going to trigger a reminder alert on stage 2, on step 2. So that's going to remind the user that they have a meeting that they forgot about. That's going to redirect them. They're going to click the link. They're going to go to the phishing page. Now, the thing with Google is if you ever logged into Google, which probably everybody has, they ask you for your email address first. And then what they do is they actually send you to the password page. But that password page has your email address, but it also has your profile image. So the way that we do that is in the background, we actually go to the Picasa profile page, pull the JSON object, extract the profile image for that user's email that they submitted, and then we just render that image on the profile page. That way it's more personalized. And then from there, so from there, we're going to phish their password because now they're seeing the password page, they see their profile page, they feel confident that it's Google. Bear in mind the urgency, right? So that notification that told them that they had a meeting that they forgot about, they're worried now. They're not even paying attention to what they're clicking on or where they're logging into. What they're going to do is they're going to give us their password. So that what we do here, and this is what MailSniper does all automatically for you, is it will go behind the scenes, authenticate with Google, learn what two-factor option that they have available, and then personalize the phishing page for the two-factor token, but all behind the scenes if it's enabled. So if it is enabled, then what it's going to do is it's going to redirect the user to that phishing page. So if it's an SMS, we're going to look at SMS phishing pages. We're going to look at all the different phishing pages. If it doesn't, we're just going to pilfer the data. That's when MailSniper comes in. MailSniper is going to run in the background. It's going to wait for the credentials and the two-factor tokens to come in if it needs to. And then we have some modules that Bo will get into a little bit later on new MailSniper features. So that's kind of the workflow that we're going to step through real quick. So real quick, hands. Which one's real? Which one's fake?
Left hand for left side, right hand for
Yeah.
right side.
So it's impossible, right? You can't. I mean, it looks exactly the same. And bear in mind, we can control the URI in the browser. Anything past the domain, we own, right? So we can make it look exactly. So obviously, the one on the left was fake. You can't tell on this one. So let's look at the personalized password. So this is what we just talked about. We're going to use the Picasa API. We're going to make an XML HTTP request. We're going to grab it, and then we're just going to ask nicely for the password. Behind the scenes, we're checking two-factor. We already seen it. So which one's real, which one's fake? This is the personalized page. Same thing. You can't really tell. It's exactly the same. So the one on the left is fake. So stepping through the personal authenticator, this is a little bit more interesting because now it's the profile image plus the email plus Google tells, hey, this is a two-factor application. So go to Google Authenticator or go to Duo Security and get the token. This is a little bit more interesting because these tokens expire in 30 seconds. So you really have to automate the process because they're going to put that token in your two-factor page. But what we've done is behind the scenes when we've authenticated and we've found that they're using the Google Authenticator for their two-factor, we're also extracting, it says log into Google Authenticator. We're taking that Google Authenticator app name and then feeding it back to the user as well. So just the same way that we did with the profile image, we're now also personalizing it for Google Authenticator. And then you have to log in within 30 seconds or relatively up to 30 seconds depending on when they actually generated the token that they're giving to you. And so that looks like this. If you notice which one's left, which one's right, we don't really know, but if you see where it says Google Authenticator, we just extracted that and then rendered it in the page. And so MailSniper is basically just templating, so you could add whatever you need to there. This one, it looks like the one on the left is the fake one because of the profile image. But real quick disclaimer, so Google is not very consistent with rendering the profile image on their login process. So sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. We do it all the time, so ours looks more legit than theirs. Yeah. So, and then the personalized SMS, this is the reason why I really think this is such a bad idea. It's the image and the email, obviously, but it's going to ask for the last 2 digits of the phone number. Well, bear in mind, we've authenticated for that user they've shown us the last 2 digits. We extract that data out of the page. We render it on the phishing page for the user. So now it says, oh, wow, you know what? It has my last 2 digits. It must be Google. And then the interesting thing about this one is, as comparison to the last one, you have plenty of time. This is an actual, these are actual tokens that were sent to me. And look at the timestamp. It's the same token hours later. And some of them I didn't even show on here, but it was like 3 hours later or something crazy. But it's the same token, and the reason for this is because what Google does is when it generates the token and it sends it to the SMS, if it doesn't get used, which it's not, right, because we're triggering it on the back end. We log into the back end, it triggers the 2-factor token to get sent to their text message. We redirect them to our phishing page, but we never actually use that token until we need it. So that you have plenty of time. Basically, that token is not tied to a session. The SMS token, I'm going to repeat, SMS token is not tied to a specific session. And you could see I could fish it and then use it 2 hours later when they're at home and they're not even at work anymore. And so they just resend that used token until it gets used. And so personalized SMS. So the last 2 digits you see there, it looks legit. Obviously, it's the fake ones on the left again because it didn't, for some dumb reason, load my profile image on the right. But you can see these are very exact pages. This is super dangerous. It's super automated. I would say that 2-factor is definitely broken, at least in this use. So the phone prompt, this is the new one, contains the profile image, the email, and then it has this, will you please touch this number? And then on the screen, we'll see a little bit later, but it prompts on the phone. So the first one is this you? Yes or no? They click yes, or they click no. If they click yes, then if it's suspicious, and for some reason I'm not really sure, but it's always suspicious with MailSniper. I think it's because of my user agent. But it's prompting you for the number, you click that number, and then, but remember, it's showing you the number on the page that we've authenticated against, so we know what number to feed to them again. So we just tell them, hey, will you please click this number 46? And they're like, okay, yeah, for sure. And so the cool thing with this is the phone prompt is a little bit more tricky because when they're authenticating, yeah, we could just take that 46, they could authenticate it. We could take those like the session cookies and all the headers and then feed them through. We're not doing that yet with MailSniper. So what's ends up happening is, I'm going to come back here, we have 2 different triggers that we need to do. First is when we're identifying that they are enrolled behind the scenes. The second one is our authentication. So we're going to log in again, and then these screens are going to prop back up on their phone. The cool thing is if we do it quick enough, the new image that loads on their phone prompt will actually override. So our real authentication where we're logging into their account will make their old screen go away, and it'll be our screen that they're actually clicking. So it doesn't matter anyway, it's just going to work. And so the real versus fake, same thing. Pass the name through. This one I screwed up. It says check your phone. It's so inconsistent on the background too. You have to have like 4 different regular expressions to make sure that you get all the different variants that they do, because they do a lot. They like unlock your phone or check your phone, and they change the verbiage. And if you don't have all the regex for all of them, you'll miss it. And so then the dreaded UTF. This is the interesting one. So contains the image and the email, obviously. We can capture signed messages because whenever you put a UTF into the USB and you actually submit the credentials, it's really just passing that signed message with 2 new end line returns. And so line feeds get sent, it gets posted to the server. We can capture the token. The problem is we can't really replay it, and there's reasons for that. The first thing is I tried replaying it with SendKeys, but SendKeys doesn't actually pass the key code because the key code with keyboard events in JavaScript basically is how it determines whether it's a virtual keyboard or a real keyboard. So that didn't work. So I was like, okay, I got another idea. What about the rubber ducky? Well, you go to the Hack5 ducky. It's a USB composite device. I'll change the PID to make it look like my YubiKey. I'll modify the firmware so that it looks like it's an actual YubiKey. It doesn't obviously conform to the FIDO UTF spec because we don't have any functionality into the ducky. We'll save that one for later. I think there's some cool stuff here that we could do with like using a ducky to clone a UTF as long as we capture the message, as long as we replay that message from a legit one. I'm not sure yet. I don't know. We haven't proved that yet. But so instead of trying to like do anything with UTF, let's just bypass it, right? So you have UTF. The only thing is UTF only works with Chrome, and it requires the backup SMS or the one-time pass, right? So what we do is we could downgrade to the backup options. And so what we do is we changed our backend user agent. I was going through some of their JavaScript and looking at things the way that I was working. And I noticed that it was checking for this CryOS user agent. So I tried with my Python because I'm just using requests with MailSniper, and so I just used it. And the interesting thing is, whenever you're using a user agent that's not Chrome, it doesn't even bother with the UTF. All it does is it reverts back to the recovery options, which is SMS or the Authenticator app, and then it triggers that SMS token. And from there, what I'm doing is I'm identifying its UTF, and so I just immediately I fish their SMS. I trigger the SMS on the background. And so we don't even have to use UTF. We just send them to the phishing page for the SMS, and life is good. So we just continue as normal. So UTF with backup options is dead. We cannot have UTF with backup options and expect UTF to be the device that's being used. Because, I mean, you're going to go to a page, you're not going to know whether you've enrolled in UTF on that page or not, or it might be SMS. You're going to forget. I mean, nobody really knows because the adoption rate is so low on this. Or maybe I'm in Firefox and I'm used to seeing it. I'm used to seeing that anyway. I don't know, it's silly to have UTF with backup options that you can't turn off. And so from there, I want to add a couple different things. I did notice that there was, during suspicious activity with Google, sometimes it'll ask you the last location that you've logged in from. This is really simple. I just take the GeoIP of the request on the phishing page. I do a GeoIP, I grab the location, the city, state, zip, or whatever, and then I feed it back into MailSniper so that whoever's using it knows where they're actually at. So you can just type it in there and it's good. The other thing is there's some new alerts that they do in Google or in Gmail. Whenever you log in, it'll be a big red bar at the top. That bar, it's like, hey, I've seen some unknown activity or some weird malicious activity. If you clear it, it clears it for everybody, and it's only showing it to new sessions that sign in, so you don't have to really worry about it. It should show it to everybody, but it doesn't. And then the other thing is, so multiple failed phone prompts. So if you're using the phone prompt and you're testing this, you could lock your phone prompt out for a couple hours, so just be aware. I don't know how many times it takes. It takes, I think, 3 or 4 maybe. And then the other thing that we were talking about doing that we haven't done yet is we could just complete the session on the back end and then pass that session information to MailSniper. We're not doing that currently because we just ran out of time. This is all like within the last couple weeks we've got the code going. But that's something that we're going to do kind of in the future. And so from there we'll just go on to more of the persisting access.
So now that you have access to somebody's Google account, how about creating an app backdoor, app-specific password? So maybe they did catch the email before we created a rule to delete that email saying that they received a login from a place they normally don't log in from, and then they go change the password. Well, let's automate creating an app password backdoor, or just go grab all the backup codes, and then we have another way in, which is fun. Add a new 2FA device so that we now control the two-factor, and then maybe change the recovery email and create a forwarder for emails. So you wanted to talk about this, right?
Yeah, just real quick, I just did this in this morning. So basically, you could add full scope access to the account. You could generate an API key on the back end. He'll get into that a little bit. But if you just add some scopes, and you see over here, you can read, send, delete, manage your email. Bear in mind, you already have the session, so you don't have to trick the user into authorizing this. You are the user, so you just authorize it for them. And then it adds it as an authorized app. It gives them full access backdoor to pretty much everything, their calendars, their Google Groups, their Drive, or sending an email.
We have 10 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, again, like that's through the API. You don't even necessarily need to use that. It's just that makes it easy to automate, right? You hit it with the API. So let's talk about pilfering data. With MailSniper, that's one of the main things that I do with it is search email, find sensitive data. That's kind of what similar idea to what MailSniper was doing with Exchange. We're now searching Gmail, same exact thing. So we have a module now to search Gmail for sensitive data. The cool thing about searching Gmail through with MailSniper is that it doesn't actually show like any of the emails as being read. So you can search and like let's say password or something, get 70 emails that have the word password in it, and you get the full contents of it. None of it looks like it was ever read, which is kind of neat. And then a bonus is that you got the Google search operators, right? So you can throw like file type :PDF in there. You can throw various like search operators like or like password or credentials, that kind of thing, which is nice. And soon we'll include Drive, groups, and contacts as well. But let's talk about the data export for Google for a minute, because this is pretty crazy how much data you can get. So there's a myactivity.google.com site that allows you to basically export all of your Google data that they know about you, and it includes literally everything, like every piece of search history you've ever had, all your location history. So if you've ever used navigation on your phone with Google, it has all the places you've ever been, every single G Drive file you've ever uploaded, all your emails, all your contacts. I mean, we're talking about like nightmare scenarios for, you know, anyone really, but like, you know, think about like a politician or celebrity that you get access to their Gmail and just go export everything now. All that search history, that'd be a bad day. So yeah, and then pivoting systems.
We can just probably skip.
Yeah, let's get to the demo because we only have, I think, like what, 5 minutes or so. Yeah, but we'll upload these slides.
All right.
So what we're going to demo is basically the event injection from MailSniper using the API. And so Mike's going to show basically the settings in Google, like how, like what I was mentioning earlier, where you can disable the automatically adding to your calendar function.
Cool. So, okay, so this is a brand new account, so if you guys screw with me, I'm okay with that. It's Wyatt Earp, and so we created a new email real quick, and what I want to show here is this new setting. This is, so we notified Google a couple weeks ago that we could inject calendar invites. There were no features. We stepped through together at Black Hills trying to see if we could turn it off on the Google admin side, or if we could turn it off on the user's calendar side. We couldn't do this at all. The only thing that they did have is this events from Gmail. So I'm going to turn that off real quick. Notice that if you turn this security feature on, or if you turn this normal feature off, it prompts you and it says, hey, you'll no longer see any events automatically added. The other thing is, if you've previously added events, they go away. So you can't really turn this off, not without really greatly impacting your calendar. And that's just from the Gmail. This new feature, so after we notified them, they didn't really say anything to us, but they added this new feature about a week later. Automatically add invitations to my calendar. So we're going to say no, only show invitations to which I've responded. We're going to save it here, and then I'm going to just take this. So in MailSniper, I already have a session here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just use MailSniper to invoke it. We're going to add it to the calendar, and we got an error. Of course, it's not authorized. That's because the access token is expired.
Yeah, here, let me see. Here. So with Google's access tokens, you have to refresh them every hour. So apparently we did this a little more than an hour ago. Sorry about that. But yeah, so basically with their access tokens, you initially get like an authorization token, and you also get a refresh token, and then the access token, and then you have to refresh the access token. Which that piece is going to be automated into MailSniper probably next week. So any questions so far while he's doing this? Anybody got a question? Yeah?
How long would it take you to set up for some completely different service?
For like, let's say like Yahoo Mail or something? No idea, because it's different, completely different service, right? So I have no idea like how their API is. Probably easier. I mean, well, I wouldn't say many. I mean, it depends on the service, right? It depends on what their API looks like. Depends on what's that?
Office 365?
So MailSniper kind of does Office 365 already.
With two-factor?
Not with two-factor, no. Well, it depends on the two-factor, right? So we've tested a couple different two-factors, and some of them don't cover, you know, all the services like EWS, MAPI, and if that's the case, then it would work. But
Okay.
any other questions so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From a blue team perspective, we don't have access to the Google admin console, but maybe we have a server or something to see logs. Maybe we have experience with pulling logs
From Google? Oh man.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
So we'll get into it in the back, but on the Google admin side, there's some really cool stuff. They even have an SDK, so you could run like the CLI side of it. Let's see if this one works real quick. I don't know if it's the same token, but yeah, they got some cool stuff. Some really good back-end tools to kind of aid that process. Here, you want to take this real quick?
Yeah. Other question? No? All right. Just grabbing the access token. I'm just going to commentary this, I guess, play by play. He's going to copy it. He's going to paste it in the spot where it should go. One of the things I was mentioning is like with the availability of adding the fact that it looks like they accepted the invite. So there's a few different flags that you're not seeing here. You're seeing like the event title that we're going to specify. You're seeing the description. You're seeing the location. But there's a lot of other things. You can basically tell it. Oh yeah, should work this time.
There it is.
There it is. Bam, on the calendar. Yep. Oh, and hey, Mr. Strand is here.
Hey, we're running short on time and we don't want to screw over the other presenter. They're going to keep going up until the line, and then Michael's going to cut us off. But there will be a video released, and there will be another step-by-step tutorial blog post released, so everybody can actually go through and do this as well, okay? Because there's a lot to cover in a very quick period of time.
Yeah, we're planning on doing a series of the Tradecraft Security Weekly shows, talking about each one of these things. So.
You got 4 more minutes.
Yep, we got 4 minutes?
Cool.
Cool. You wanna, here, get the, go ahead.
So real quick, fighting back. So this is cool. So that was basically what we were doing. And this is interesting because this is going to your question about the logs, right? So this is a Google Admin Console log. The way that we're currently doing it, this is clearly identifying, right? So you see the first one, the very, very bottom. You'll see that it was presented with a login challenge. This is when we're triggering it on the back end. The second one is when we've actually captured it and we're actually logging in ourselves. So you see like 1, 2, and then they logged in. 1, 2, logged in. This is, so they're all available, and you could search by IP address. So if you found somebody's account was compromised, straight to Google Admin, take the IP address that was logged into that account, search Google, you'll find all the other creds behind the scenes. But it's pretty good for like removing backdoors and kind of looking to see who's set up other stuff. The other thing is, so if you didn't expect it, question it, right? It's typical. The problem is we don't change, or we don't train for behavior. We train for like technology. Like don't click it if it's from this person. So let's just look for weird activity. They got some really cool stuff with security checkup that you can kind of go do. So let's just recap real quick. So SMS one-time pass for two-factor is completely dead if the tokens are not tied to sessions. It's dead. Don't do it. Don't use it. UTF is completely useless if there's a backup option that's default that it goes back to. Phishing training should be on behavior, not specific red flags. And there's, and obviously for the company, having Google Suite is super convenient, but just because it's convenient for you doesn't mean it's not convenient for attackers. And then if you use G Suite, literally at this moment, anybody can inject an event into your calendar, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing that you're going to be able to do about it until Google fixes this. And so who knows when they're going to do that. Hopefully it'll be soon, because I think they're really good with catching up on stuff. But so that's pretty much it.